It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
The Mets. The freaking New York Mets. How we doing? Welcome to another edition of Rico Brogna. The Mets won 2 games in a row against the Arizona Diamondbacks. We call that the tease. A little bit of a tease. A little bit of a, hey, maybe that team meeting will spark this team and they'll go on a little bit of a run. And then Saturday occurred where they got destroyed. And then Sunday occurred where the Mets completed what they have done to us all of May. So why not do it in June? And that's blow a late lead. Have a lead in the 9th inning. Have a game in your hands. Have a chance to win a series against Arizona. End this homestand at least on a positive note before they go to D.C. and London. And a combination, and here's how I'll define it, and then we'll get into the specifics. A combination of Carlos Mendoza, Jake Diekman being terrible, and Jose Quintana conspired for the Mets to blow yet another 9th inning lead. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. I was at this game on Sunday. I brought both of my kids. I brought my wife. I'm sitting there in the top of the 9th inning, and I took one quick little grab of my phone, and I logged in a FanDuel, which I never do when I'm with the family. But I did it because I just knew in the pit of my stomach, this freaking team was going to find another way to blow a game. So with a 1-run lead in the top of the 9th inning, seeing Jake Diekman walk in to try to save this game, the Diamondbacks were like plus 580. And I looked at it, and I was about to explain it to my kids, and I said, screw it, I ain't explaining anything. I'm just going to place a nice little wager on the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I did that because I knew the way you knew, the way every Met fan knew they were blowing this game. And I said they blew this game because of 3 reasons, or 3 things led to the blown game in the 9th inning. Number 1, the manager. Number 2, the actual reliever who blew the game, Jake Diekman. And number 3, Quintana. Let's start with Quintana. And we'll get to Saturday's game. We'll get to a little minor league update that may give you some optimism. So we got a lot to do on this, Rico. Plus, we'll read plenty of your emails, thericob@gmail.com. Jose Quintana, you have got to pitch more than 4 freaking innings against the Arizona Diamondbacks. There are little things in a game, little tiny things that happen early that are your signs that you know things are going to go badly, because eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. Jose Quintana gives up the 2 home runs in the top of the 1st inning before you could even settle down and get comfortable on a Sunday afternoon. And we're literally 8 pitches into the game. He gives up a bomb to Ketel Marte. He gives up the bomb to Lourdes Gurriel, and they're 2-0. And I'll never forget, my wife looked over at me, because here's the thing about my wife. She doesn't watch sports. She doesn't care about sports. It's why we get along so well. But she knows when I'm in pain. You know what I mean? We all have significant others like that. They may not share our love for sports, but they want your team to win because they know it gives you joy. And when they don't win, it gives you pain. So I was telling my wife the other day when we were at the game on Thursday, one of the rare games we went to together, I said, so baby, they suck. They're really bad. This is a bad, bad season. And I was giving her the quick tutorial on how bad this season has been. So she's sitting there, 2 boys between us. And after the 2nd home run, she looks over at me and says, wow, you're right. They're bad. And I'm like, yes, welcome to my world. So Quintana gives up those 2 bombs in the 1st inning of this game. But to his credit, the 2nd inning could have been an outright disaster when he gives up the walk, when he gives up the double ahead in the count to Blaze Alexander. But he fights through the inning. He fights through it. Yes, they're down 3-0, but it could have been far, far worse. And to Quintana's credit, he gives you a clean 3rd inning. So Quintana's got that opportunity to give you his typical 6 innings, 3 runs, which, by the way, I'd sign for. I know that's a 4.5 ERA, but I remember last year with Quintana, and it was such a weird year for him because he missed the first half of the year. So when he started pitching, the games were really irrelevant. I mean, that's where we're basically out of it. But it felt like every start he made was 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 innings, 3 runs. And that is more than acceptable. Look, if you pitch 6 innings, 3 runs, if you pitch 6 innings, 2 runs, and this offense can't hit, I'll turn this microphone on. Every Met fan will log on Twitter. They'll text their friends, and they'll rightfully complain about the offense. 6 innings, 3 runs, this day and age is fine. So he gets through the 4th inning. And obviously the Mets put together that really big bottom of the 3rd inning with the back-to-back triples, which was crazy to see. Brandon Nimmo, even J.D. Martinez. And they fight back. They take the lead. And what Quintana needed to do was get through, forget the 6th, get through the 4th and 5th inning. Offense just gave you runs. They just gave you that lead. Get through the 4th, get through the 5th, maybe get an out in the 6th inning. You don't have to give me the full quality start, but can you get the baseball into the 6th inning? And here's the moment where things went to crap. You have a 4-3 lead. It's the 4th inning. I'll tell you exactly where I was. I wasn't in my seat for this. I was at Kiddie Field. But the beautiful part about Kiddie Field is when you look back towards the regular field, they got a huge TV screen. So I got my boys hand in hand, and I'm watching what's going on in this game. And Jose Quintana strikes out Tucker Barnhart, a pitch right down the middle, and there's a runner on first. There's 2 outs. It's the 4th inning. You know his pitch count's getting up there, but just get through the inning. And he walks Ketel Marte, and he walks Corbin Carroll. And even though he got Gurriel to fly out and got through the 4th inning, that's the game. That's the game because you already have a shorthanded bullpen. You already have a bullpen that doesn't feature Edwin Diaz. You already have that. You already have a bullpen that features the newly activated Drew Smith, but who knows if Carlos Mendoza is going to use him and in what kind of spot he's going to use him. Either way, you got a bullpen that hasn't been good over the last month. So once Quintana issues those back-to-back walks, I'm telling you, sometimes you don't even give up runs. Sometimes it's an inning that you come away from like, oh, we survived. But that's the inning that screws you. Jose Quintana has to pitch more than 4 innings. Now, I can scream about this, but here's the reality. And you're probably thinking this too. Who gives a rat's ass? He's going to be on a different team in a month and a half. And the reality is you're right. He's going to be on a different team in a month and a half. But I guess when you're sitting here on June 2nd and June 3rd, there's still that like slight hope, that minuscule hope that maybe this team could go win some games and make this season interesting. So I apologize. I apologize because you'll get a lot of this over the next month where everything isn't going to be about the trade deadline. There's actually going to be moments where I think about a baseball game and I want to see my team win. But yes, Jose Quintana will be on a different team come August 1st. You can believe that. But when he has to labor through the 4th inning the way he did, the handwriting's on the wall. The Met offense better do more, better build a bigger lead, because there's no way this bullpen is going to hold it down and get the last how many outs? You got to get 5 innings out. You got to get 15 outs out of this bullpen. With who? Now, here's the funny part. So the offense does nothing. That'll be forgotten about. We'll think about how they blew the lead. But the offense really does do nothing. They didn't get a runner in scoring position again after that J.D. Martinez triple. They had 2 base runners the rest of the game. So the offense deserves plenty of blame. They have the 4-run 3rd inning, and then they go into hibernation. It's like the Rangers in Game 6. We're done. We're out. We don't want to play anymore. Sorry for that dig. Anyhow, Mendoza goes to the bullpen, 84 pitches for Quintana. And as far as, hey, do you try to squeeze a 5th inning out of him? Yeah. Like, I probably would have. I would have said, you know what? Go get through the 5th inning. But I think that at 84 pitches, and as shaky as Quintana has been, there's a really good chance he implodes right then and there. So I would have, the way I'd phrase it, and you'll hear it because I'm about to rip Carlos Mendoza a lot more. There are some moves in which I'm adamant, hey, I don't like that, or hey, I support that. This is one of those moves where I probably would have pushed Quintana a little bit. 4 innings is not enough. But at 84 pitches and Walker and Grichuk and Suarez, 3 right-hand hitters coming up, I'm not totally opposed to it. So he goes to Dedniel Nunez, who to his credit looks great. This is the part where Carlos Mendoza drove me nuts. You have a shorthanded bullpen. I don't even know who you can trust in this bullpen. I have no idea. I know Adam Ottavino ended up pitching really well later, and Reed Garrett pitched really well later. Those guys have been bad recently. So there's really nobody in this bullpen you could trust. You just activated Drew Smith, hence why Josh Walker went down. I mean, Josh Walker basically threw 18 games on Saturday. More on that a little bit later on. So I don't know who you could trust. So my attitude when you have a bullpen that features nobody you could trust is, hey, why don't you ride somebody who actually looks pretty good? So Dedniel Nunez, after he gave up that double to Randall Grichuk in the 5th inning, gets back-to-back strikeouts. Looks great. Looks nasty. Looks confident. He starts the 6th inning, and he strikes out Kevin Newman. So now Dedniel Nunez has struck out 3 guys in a row. I'm not trying to convince you or anybody that Dedniel Nunez is Dennis Eckersley in his prime. All I'm saying is the guy struck out 3 people in a row. Why are you in a rush to go use someone else out of your bullpen? Now, my issue isn't Danny Young, who came in and also pitched really well. It's not a knock on Danny Young. It's not a knock on the fact that you have to look at this game as I need to get this amount of outs. So when Quintana comes out of the game, you need 15. When you took Nunez out of the game, you still needed 11. So I'm playing the game backwards. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I need to get 11 outs. Where am I getting them from? And shouldn't I take any out I can get from someone who just struck out 3 consecutive guys and Dedniel Nunez? And don't give me this lefty-lefty crap. Let me blow that one away because Mendoza did it again later in the game. First of all, Tucker Barnhart is not a Major League Baseball player. Okay, he's not very good. So I don't need to go lefty-lefty on Tucker Barnhart. That's number one. Number two, if you're eyeing Corbin Carroll hasn't hit anybody this season. And I got a news flash for you. His numbers against lefties are actually as good, if not better, than against righties. You're not facing somebody in the prime of their career having a massive year who's got that deficiency against lefties where you need to have a lefty on the mound. And oh, by the way, the guy in the middle is Ketel Marte, who's an all-star when he bats right-handed this year and has basically been Jeff McNeil when he bats left-handed. True story. Look it up. So why? 2 things. Why is Carlos Mendoza in such a rush to go to another arm in his bullpen when he needs to find a way to get how many outs? 11 more. And why do you feel like you have to go lefty-lefty with Danny Young against those players I just mentioned? Tucker Barnhart stinks. Corbin Carroll stinks too so far this season, for whatever that's worth. And B is actually better against lefties and righties, and then you're taking Ketel Marte and you're making him an all-star. Because when he bats right-handed, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but trust me, you could fact-check me on this. When he bats right-handed, his OPS is like 950. I think he's hit 7 of his home runs as a right-hand hitter. Against lefties, or when he bats left-handed, his numbers are like 630. I'm telling you, he's Jeff McNeil. Compare Ketel Marte's numbers as a left-hand hitter with Jeff McNeil's numbers. Now I feel like I have to look this up to prove myself correct. Jeez, I guess I should. Just in case I'm wrong. But trust me, I'm not wrong. So those are the 2 reasons why that move by Carlos Mendoza made absolutely no sense. And what's crazy is, look, everybody was doing their job. So these are the kinds of things that you can get nuts about. But the Mets everybody's getting the job done. Danny Young gets the job done. Reed Garrett strikes out the side. Adam Ottavino pitched the dominant 1-2-3 inning. All right, let me give you the Marte numbers to prove myself almost correct. That's how I'd phrase it. I'm almost correct. When he is batting right-handed, so a lefty is on the mound, Ketel Marte has a 950 OPS and has hit, well, now he hit 2 more home runs, so he has 9 of his 12 home runs as a right-hand hitter. 9 of his 12. 9 of his 12 as a right-hand hitter when he gets almost half the amount of at-bats. As a lefty, Ketel Marte's hitting .245 with a .680 OPS, 3 home runs, 15 RBIs. I'm right. It's Jeff McNeil. It's actually a little bit better than Jeff McNeil, but you get the point. So, listen, I don't know. I don't know what Carlos Mendoza's thinking. I really don't. And by the way, what happened against those left-handed pitchers? Oh, let's take a look. Against Quintana, he hit a home run. Against Danny Young, he ripped a double. And against Jake Diekman, he hit a 2-run home run that won them the game. So, brilliant managing. I mean, it's just brilliant. Like, why wouldn't you want to have a guy bat from his strong side over and over again late in the game? Maybe I'm the idiot. Sorry, I banged the microphone. Could you have asked for another inning out of Reed Garrett? Sure, why not? Again, who's pitching the 9th inning? If you're thinking long-term, and once you make these moves that I disagree with, because again, I would have run Nunez a little bit longer, I would have looked at Garrett and Ottavino and said, you get me my last 9 outs. Whether it's 5 from Reed and 4 from Otto, somehow find a way to get these 9 outs, unless one of them's struggling, and then I make a move. Instead, Reed Garrett strikes out the side, boom, you're out of the game. Adam Ottavino pitches a dominant 1-2-3 inning, strikes out 2, boom, you're out of the game. And then the manager again, against the same 3 guys, needs to go to a lefty. I mean, it's just comical. And this time in the 9th inning, and you could see this coming from a mile away, Tucker Barnhart's not even going to hit. Gabriel Moreno is going to. And what did he do? He ripped a double. What did Ketel Marte do? Shockingly, he hit a home run. Coming into this game today, he hit 7 home runs in 94 plate appearances as a right-hand hitter. That puts him on pace to hit like 70 home runs in a full season. So let's clearly have him from that side of the plate. Now, I don't want to exonerate Jake Diekman. Jake Diekman stinks. So I mentioned the 3 things that conspired in blowing the game. Jose Quintana only going 4 innings. Yes. Carlos Mendoza mismanaging that bullpen, in my opinion. Yes. And then you've got Jake Diekman, who didn't have to give up a double to Gab Moreno and didn't have to give up a home run to Ketel Marte. And by the way, I think what I would have done if he didn't want to squeeze more outs out of Reed Garrett and didn't want to squeeze more outs out of Adam Ottavino, I think I just would have given Sean Reed-Foley the clean 9th inning. Like, why it was Jake Diekman, to me, does not make a lot of sense. And then the Met offense does nothing. I mean, they had a chance in the 9th inning to make something from Saturday that seemed so trivial, so important. If you think back to Saturday's game, if you watched it, the Mets are getting their asses kicked, and they put together this Fugazi rally in the bottom of the 9th inning. Remember that? Pete Alonso hit a home run. All of a sudden, it forced Torey Lovullo to go to Paul Sewald. Well, maybe Paul Sewald having to throw a few pitches on Saturday would have hurt him on Sunday, because the Met offense had a chance to come back in the bottom of the 9th inning. And instead, Paul Sewald had a very easy, neat and tidy 1-2-3 inning, and the Mets lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks at Citi Field. And there is your conclusion to what was an absolutely abysmal, embarrassing, pathetic homestand. They won 3 games. They went 3-7 in a 10-game homestand against the San Francisco Giants, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. A homestand that began with Steve Cohen saying, hey, I'm excited for the homestand. We're trying out some new giveaways. And then the Mets proceeded to not only lose 7 of 10 at home, but all the embarrassment in between. The Jorge Lopez situation, the team meet, well, whatever. I don't even want to remember that stuff. But the reality is they lost 7 of 10. And the reality is Sunday's game was a reminder. They find ways to lose all the time. They blow leads like we've never seen a team blow leads. And so when you go back to the beginning of this season, the early stages of this season, when they had a tiny bit of promise, because there was a moment where they did have some promise earlier this season. They were 12-8. You can go back, whether it's on the archives of Rico Brogna or the archives of these YouTubes of Rico Brogna that you may have been watching, to a Rico we did right after they won a dramatic game against the Dodgers on that West Coast trip in the middle of April. And I was a naive, excited child because I thought, wow, we're good. We're pretty good. But back then, when they were good, briefly, their bullpen was so solid. And now their bullpen may be their biggest problem. Like, I don't know. If you try to figure out the Mets' biggest problem, you could name 100 different things. You could say their star players. You could say their starting pitching not going deep enough into games. You could say they walk too many people. You could say their defense is horrendous. And certainly now, you can say their bullpen is awful. Even in a game in which their bullpen wasn't awful because they needed to get 15 outs. And they got 15 outs. And they only gave up 2 runs. So when you think about it that way, well, 5 innings, 2 runs, Evan, that's a great effort. Yeah. Until you blow it in the 9th inning. That was a very, 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 very frustrating game to watch. Francisco Lindor, who was getting very hot, he backed up his, let's call it team meeting, got by going 4 for 4. He was on base a bunch of times in a row. He went 0 for 4. He did nothing in this game. This Met offense, outside of the 3rd inning, when Alonso got a big hit, and Nimmo got a big hit, and JD got a big hit, this offense was absolutely inept. Against who? Against Brandon Pfaadt? Against Justin Martinez? Against Paul Sewald? It was a bad, bad, bad close to a 10-game homestand. I tried to see a scenario with the 2 games in a row that they won Thursday and Friday where, hey, maybe they could start to make things interesting. Split the last 2 games against Arizona. Win 3 in a row against the Nationals. Split against Philadelphia. Win 2 out of 3 or sweep the Marlins, and boom, we're cooking. Especially in this National League where, I don't know, man, you look at the standings right now. What is the record of the team with the last wild card spot? I know, and by the way, I'm not bringing that up to say, look how close the Mets are in the standings. I'm bringing it up as a reminder that it doesn't take much. In fact, I'm looking at the standings right now. The last wild card team is 29-31, 2 games under 500. So if the Mets would have won, I don't know, 3 or 4 games that they blew, and instead of blowing them, they turn into wins, and you're, let's say, 27-32, you're like a game out of a playoff spot. And yeah, that makes it worse. It does. Because last year, when the Mets ended up selling it, and I think ultimately we agreed they made the right decision, but what was still frustrating was seeing how the Diamondbacks could win as few games as they did, make the postseason, and beat a bunch of teams that were clearly better than them. And it was a reminder of, wow, if the Mets would have won, 4 or 5 more games, maybe they're the team that gets hot and goes on a run. And I know a lot of baseball fans don't want to view the sport that way because we grew up not thinking about the sport looking that way, but that's the way the sport looks now. And I'm sorry. If you told me right now in this moment, again, not predicting it, just saying, hey, the Mets are going to go 80-82. They are. They're going to go 80-82, and that's going to be good enough for a wild card spot. You're damn right I'd sign for it. We're too good for playoff spots? Look at the freaking wall at Citi Field. How many playoff spots have we actually seen? How many playoff series have we actually seen? So what's infuriating about a game like today and a game like Pick'em, whether it's the blown lead against the Dodgers or the big blown lead against San Francisco, I mean, you could take your freaking pick on all the games they blew just on this homestand. If you win those games instead of losing those games, and instead of 3-7, you're 6-4, they're a game out of a playoff spot. So completely infuriating. As far as Saturday's game was concerned, when the Mets lost Saturday's game? You may think it was on Christian Walker's grand slam in the third inning. That's not true. They lost the game in the bottom of the first inning. In the bottom of the first inning. Like, think about everything around Saturday. The Darryl Strawberry speech, which went on and on and on, but you know what? I had no issue with it. It was great. It was a great, great speech. And as it was going on, I kept thinking to myself, nah, keep going. I don't care how long this speech is because A, we got to watch the Mets play, and B, it was great. So when I say it went on and on and on, I'm not saying it in a negative light. I'm saying it that was the best part of the day light. But on a day where Darryl Strawberry basically looks into the Met dugout and says, these are the best fans in the world. They are going to love you when you get wins and you're successful, and they're going to tell you about it when you stink. I wanted, naively, I admit, I wanted to see the Mets come out like a house on fire. That's what I really wanted to see. Come out like a house on fire, make Darryl proud, make it 3 in a row, and let's go. And why not? You're facing a guy in Slade Ciccone who came in with a 6 ERA. So when I say they lost the game in the first inning, they lost the game in the first inning because Francisco Lindor hits a ball that is 6 inches from being a home run, bounces off the top of the wall, gets thrown out at second base. Pete Alonso then doubles. So the Mets should be up 1-0. They should have a lead. They don't, but they still have a runner on second and 1 out, and Brandon Nimmo strikes out, and J.D. Martinez grounds out. And to end up with nothing after everything we just witnessed, the emotion of the Darryl ceremony, Lindor hitting the ball off the top of the wall, Pete Alonso hitting the ball off the top of the wall, and you get nothing, it was an absolute buzzkill. And truthfully, they were done after that. They had a few opportunities. JD had a 2-out double in the fourth. They did nothing. They got that bomb of a home run from Mark Vientos. Then they had a leadoff man on, or a man on right after that. They did nothing. And look, Sean Manaea made one bad pitch. It looked as if he was going to somehow miraculously get through that third inning jam he created when he gave up a single and a walk and a double steal. Got the back-to-back strikeouts on Marte and Corbin Carroll, but the walk to Randall Grichuk, man, and this team walks way too many guys. He's been going on all season long with a lot of different people, including Sean Manaea. You cannot walk Randall Grichuk in that spot with Christian Walker on deck. I don't care if you have a base open, because Christian Walker's capable of that. 12th home run of the season, grand slam. He has more RBIs than anybody on this Met team, and you could just feel how over this game was. Despite the fact that the Mets at night earlier were down 3-0 immediately and came back and won. It just felt like you could put the lights out. The offense did nothing in this game until it was way too late. Manaea, it was a strange performance by Manaea because he was good in the first. He was good in the second. He makes the one bad pitch in the third. He's good in the fourth. He's good in the fifth. And then he ran out of gas in the sixth inning when Mendy pushed him a little bit in that sixth inning. So it was a very uneven performance by Manaea. There was a lot of good. There were a few mistakes, but it comes down to the offense. The offense does nothing. The offense does absolutely nothing. And then Josh Walker basically takes one for the team. They're getting their ass kicked. The building empties out. And great, the Mets add the meaningless runs in the ninth inning. The only way that ninth inning wasn't going to be meaningless is if they beat Paul Sewald on Saturday. If wearing him down on Saturday led to beating him on Sunday, then it would have been, okay, it was worth it. Instead, it wasn't, and the Mets get just absolutely destroyed. As far as the day was concerned, I thought Darryl was amazing. I did. I thought it was a great, great speech. All the thank yous, the thing he said about his biggest regret was leaving the New York Mets. Man, I was so young when he left as a free agent. You know, I remember the names, but it was before I was like watching and scoring. Like, I don't have any scorecard of Darryl Strawberry as a New York Met. I wish I did. I don't. But I remember when he left and it being so weird and surreal that Darryl Strawberry, the face of this team, would go to the LA Dodgers. And then as I started getting into baseball and understanding baseball, much like I felt with Doc, I always wanted the Mets to right the wrong, to bring him back. I thought there were more opportunities with Doc Gooden to bring him back. He was so readily available. But they never did. They never brought Doc back. They never brought Darryl back. Luckily, they brought them back when they closed Shea Stadium at the end of the 2008 season. Both of those guys were there, and I think it may have been their returns, like the first times they were back. Obviously not as opponents or, playing for the Yankees or what have you. But his speech was beautiful. I thought that it was, thinking about him saying my biggest regret was leaving. Look, Darryl Strawberry was offered more money to go to the LA Dodgers. It's a business. Nobody can blame somebody. I can't, at least. I will never blame somebody for taking more money or more years to go somewhere else. It's a business. We all have to ask ourselves those same questions. Like, would we go to a different company or a different business or move somewhere if another company offered us more money? And the truth is, most of us would say yes. So I didn't even begrudge Darryl Strawberry. Not at the time, I was too young, but certainly now. And, I've kept up with that. Whether it was Jacob deGrom a few years ago, I was certainly devastated about it, but I never blamed him. Like, why would I blame someone for taking such a better deal elsewhere? So when he says that and the entire Met dugout is watching, and I'm glad they were, I thought that was nice. And you see Pete Alonso sitting there or standing there or leaning against the railing. You wonder what Pete's thinking. You do. You wonder if Pete Alonso's thinking, I got to get the hell out of here. We haven't won. I'm having my second straight, I don't want to say bad year because it's not a bad year, subpar to what I can be year. How about that? I just want the most money. I can't wait to get out of here. Or does Pete hear that and say, boy, I'll tell you, man, I want to stay. I want to be that Met legend because even if I don't win, I go out and I had 500 home runs as a New York Met, they will lionize me. And by the way, you guys may not admit that now. It's the dead honest truth. If Pete Alonso re-signs and ends up hitting, 500 career home runs as a New York Met, and who knows if this team has any success over the next 5 years. We certainly hope so. We certainly have an owner spending enough money. Of course, we'd retire his number and give him a big ceremony. Would there be some kind of bittersweetness to it? Of course. So when Darryl was saying that, I'm wondering what Pete's thinking. Because look, at the end of the day, I don't think any of us blame him if some schmucky team hands him $250 million and the Mets don't come close. He should leave. But he sees that number go up there. He knows he stays. He passes that number Darryl has. And then, yeah, you hope you win. You hope the Mets bring in enough players and they eventually win. So as Darryl was saying that, I thought about Pete and I was wondering what's going through his mind. What does he think about when he hears something like that? The other thing I thought about, and we touched on this during the Doc ceremony, not a huge crowd. And I wonder aloud about that. The Mets have had huge crowds. In fact, the biggest crowd they had outside of opening day happened on this homestand. And it happened when the Mets decided to give away Hello Kitty bobbleheads. That got 40,000 people to Citi Field. Darryl Strawberry did not bring 40,000 people to Citi Field. His bobblehead on Sunday did not bring 40,000 people to Citi Field. Doc Gooden's number being retired did not bring 40,000 people to Citi Field. But a Hello Kitty bobblehead did. I'm not complaining. I'm just wondering aloud. Like, is it that Doc and Darryl were from such a long period of time ago that you need to be over the age of 45 to, I guess, appreciate it? To want to spend your hard-earned money to go to Citi Field to watch a crappy team? I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. But the announced attendance on Saturday was 30,600. And on a gorgeous Saturday afternoon, late Saturday afternoon in June, I don't care how bad your team is, you would think by accident you're getting 35,000 people. And on Darryl retirement day, they got 30,000 people. And I just wonder. I wonder what it is. Like, do days like that just not sell? Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden are iconic Mets, but here I am at 40 years old, and I freely admit with both guys, I remember the tail end of Doc's time as a Met. I never scored Darryl Strawberry as a New York Met. Certainly scored him as a Yankee, and unfortunately as a Yankee. But I wonder if it's the age thing. Like, I give you the perfect example of this. I don't know when they're going to retire David Wright's number. They could do it at any moment, anytime. If they announced that David Wright's number was being retired and it happened 3 weeks from now, there's not a doubt in my mind they would sell that place out. Now, there are a lot of people, a lot of Met fans, I'm sure, listening right now, who would say, Evan, I'm 54 years old. David Wright, great player. We love David. He ain't a pimple on Darryl Strawberry's tuchus or Doc Gooden's tuchus. And that's not my point. I'm not arguing like won championships or a championship. Both of those guys, I'm using plural the wrong way. Doc and Darryl won a championship. David Wright did not. I get that. But maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's what he means to our generation. And maybe when you honor people so far after when they made an impact, it loses its appeal. It's the only thing I can think of, because those crowds were really, really bad. They were not good crowds, and yet you're talking about Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden. We'll talk a little bit about the minor leaguers coming up in a few minutes, but let me get to some of your emails, the ricob@gmail.com. Alex writes, we have no bullpen, can't score any runs. 4 shouldn't be our high mark. Do you think Brett Beatty is a quadruple A player? He's raking down on the farm, but can't seem to hit up here. Looking forward to when Alvarez comes back. We are all looking forward to when Alvarez comes back because, A, he makes the team better, and B, he's one of those guys that you watch, and even if this season is going completely nowhere, he's a big part of the future. Big part of the future. I think there are 2 problems here for Brett Beatty. So he's referring to Brett Beatty raking. Brett Beatty had 2 games so far in AAA since he was sent down. He had a 1-for-5 on Saturday, and then on Sunday, he had 2 home runs. And so on Sunday, he was definitely raking. He may be a quadruple A player, but I don't know where his opportunity is going to come until J.D. Martinez is traded away. I hate to look again at the trade deadline, but Mark Vientos is winning the third base job. Not only did he win it by knocking Beatty down to AAA, take a look at what he did. Take a look at what he's done. In Saturday's game, he had 2 more hits, including a home run. Sunday's game, he didn't do much. No one else did. He did draw a walk, but he's hitting over 300. He's got 4 home runs. He's the guy. He's the guy for now. And the other thing about Vientos, not to the level of Beatty, his defense looks greatly improved. I think Beatty's going to come back up here. I think that if this season continues to go where we think it's going, JD's going to be traded, and we're going to end up getting what we thought we were getting before they signed JD Martinez, which is Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos both being in the lineup. Jimmy writes, I preface this with saying I'm not arguing to fire Carlos Mendoza. I sent an email during the 0-5 skit to start the season. I have jokingly referenced the reports of the relaxed feel you and others noticed at spring training. Nobody you inquired of a basketball hoop would be there under Buck. The report you got said, of course not. The strength of the team has been their starting pitching. The manager has very little to do with their spring other than going over reports with the coaching staff. The weakness has been with the position players. They're who the manager oversees during the spring and through the season. You made some good points on the 2023 Mets I'd like to expound on. The Mets were 29-27 on May 31st, 2 weeks after Pete hurt his wrist. After the 7-19 June that left them 36-46, a 14-9 July had them back to 50-55 at the deadline. You and I were both on the fence about trading Verlander. I wasn't on the fence. I didn't want to trade him. I mean, I admit that. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to trade both of those guys. I really didn't want to give up. If we're being fair about what we all thought at the time, I'll raise my hand. I'll admit that. I mean, why would I lie? All you got to do is go back and listen to the archives if you were that bored. I didn't want to give up. They did. Obviously, I saw what they got back, the money that they paid, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. But I didn't like it. Well, I didn't love it at the time. Cohen decided to buy prospects. I hope we'd see a couple of them this year. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. It was his choice. But in hindsight, if you don't break up the team, it probably gets back to 500 by September 1st and winds up with 85 wins and wins a wild card spot. I don't know if Like, I fantasize that would have been the case. I don't know if that would have been the case. Think about what happened with Max Scherzer. Like, Max Scherzer didn't exactly light the world on fire and got hurt. So if they don't trade everyone, and David Robertson got traded to the Marlins and completely fell apart. So if they kept everybody together, I don't have any evidence based on what those guys did that they were going to win 85 games. Jimmy goes on, regardless, the message that came out of Lindor's meeting is to make adjustments to the process and change it up. That sounds a heck of a lot like pay attention to detail. That sounds like Buck Showalter. When I heard Lindor's comments, I recalled the reports of the relaxed feel in spring training. I recalled reports of Buck explaining New York to Frankie so he could put 2021 behind him. I recalled how I felt when they fired Buck. There were 99 reasons to keep him and one to fire him because David Stearns wanted his own guy, a perfectly valid reason. You were there. You have now watched this sack of shit team for a third of the season. What say you, Evan Roberts? Take Lindor's post-meeting comments, what you saw in the spring, reflect back on 2023 from a different perspective. This entire 2024 team underperforming, including fundamentals. Make your gut reaction. Maybe your gut reaction is to say you want to tell me Brandon Nimmo can't hit a baseball because of a basketball hoop, but take another minute and think about it. They're awful in every area. Pete's taking a step back defensively too. Lindor too. Wasn't it also uncharacteristic for Joey Wendell and Zach Short to be so bad defensively? It all points to preparation, both preseason and in-season. Lindor's comments sounded like they needed to take work more seriously. Buck did that part for them. All right. It's interesting. That's a very valid point. I noticed the basketball hoop in spring training, mentioned it on the Rico, spoke with people for the one day I was there. I'm certainly not a reporter, not pretending to be, that there was a more relaxed feel. And I remember saying at the time, well, that can go one of two ways. If they win, we'll credit the relaxed feel. If we don't, we're going to say what Jimmy is saying right now, that this is an unprepared baseball team. There could be a lot of validity with what you're saying because good players are not playing good. And that's scary. Like coming into this season, a lot of the skepticism was based on, well, look at the starting pitching. You got a lot of guys who are either coming off injuries or coming off effectiveness. What if they're all bad? What if none of them stay healthy? What if the starting pitching is a real issue? And I think that's a baseball issue related to talent and health. The position players, they got resumes. It goes back to that line people hate when I say the back of the baseball card. Why are they all having bad years? Like Tiki's pushed me on this too on the air. Like, why do you think they're all having bad years? Almost like, give me the reason. And I don't have a reason. Like, you can go individually. Like, individually, you can say, hey, Pete Alonso's in a contract year. Maybe he's not reacting well to the pressure. Who knows if that's true? But is there one reason why Brandon Nimmo is hitting .215 and Francisco Lindor has had such a start and stop season? I don't know if it's the preparation. I don't know if it's the relaxed feel. I also think that with a manager, there are things you see, there are things you don't see. I spent the beginning part of this podcast ripping Mendy for what I saw on a Sunday afternoon. And whether you agree with me or disagree with me, you knew where I was coming from with all of those bullpen management criticisms that I lay at Mendoza for Sunday. But there's a lot of managing we don't see. Are the Mets' fundamental issues defensively based on the manager not being prepared? I don't know. I think I need to see more from this manager with different talent before we can make that determination. Ralph writes, the Mets for a second straight year have no closer. I heard that apparently the Mets hierarchy still think they have a good team enough to make the playoffs. I don't know if that's BS or not, but bottom line, the team has no chance to make a serious run for the playoffs if they don't have a closer. They need to somehow, some way, get one on this team right now. Then when Edwin Diaz comes back and has his head right, put your closer, you get an eighth inning role. Anyway, we could get David Robertson back. Lost track of the blown saves number this year. Let's say it's 6. So give the Mets 6 less losses and 6 more wins, and they're 30-29 and in a wild card spot. Well, you can't just add a closer. First of all, I don't think any of us would be on the side of the Mets aggressively making any kind of trade to add talent in terms of like major league, high priced. We have to trade prospects to get that guy talent. Closers do not grow on trees. So unfortunately, what the Mets need to do is they need to hopefully have hit it right with Dead Neil Nunez and guys like Danny Young, and hopefully Drew Smith in a contract year comes off of his injury as ineffective, and then hopefully Edwin Diaz comes back. Because Edwin Diaz was throwing out in the outfield, so maybe his physical issues can be behind him, and he can come back and improve this bullpen. But here they are. It's so true. Think about this homestand, just this homestand, and the games they should have won if they don't implode. The 2 games against the Giants. Now, granted, they came back and won Sunday, so you want to cancel one out. 1 game against the Giants, the game they blew against the Dodgers, the last game again. Just take those 3 games and win those games instead of losing those games, and you're talking about a 6-4 homestand. And a 6-4 homestand has you a game and a half out of a playoff spot. So, yeah, you'll drive yourself nuts thinking about, hey, if you win this game or you win that game, all of a sudden this team is here. That'll drive you nuts. Now, the good news is, as much as the minor league system's been disappointing in terms of position players this year, with Jet Williams being hurt and Drew Gilbert being hurt, how about this Brandon Sprout in Double-A? So Brandon Sprout is a guy that got drafted 3 times. He got drafted by an American League team, didn't sign. Got drafted by the Mets in 2022, didn't sign. Got drafted last year, did sign. This is his first year professionally. On Sunday at Double-A Binghamton, 7 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 10 strikeouts, 1 walk. He has a 1.38 ERA in Double-A through 4 starts. That's a guy on the fast track. Blade Tidwell, who got called up to AAA a couple of weeks ago, is off to a great start. So the Mets have 2 arms, and I would say Sprout and certainly Tidwell, they are on the fast track. And hopefully they're here before the season's over, because I'll tell you this, and this does relate to the trade deadline. The thing that may excite me the most, and any other Met fan that's in it for the long haul and is not just going to stop watching games because they're a million games out of a playoff spot, which is easy to do, I don't blame you, is unlike last year, they may have young players worth watching. Now, it may not be the guys we expected position player-wise, but it may be the pitchers. Christian Scott will come back after his little respite. You throw in Blade Tidwell. You throw in Sprout probably doesn't get here this season. Maybe that's asking too much. But Tidwell may, since he's already in AAA. We may be able to watch some good young pitching that hopefully can be a part of the rotation next year and the years after. So that makes trading Severino, trading Manaea, trading Quintana, no-brainers. Like, there are decisions. And by the way, when I say no-brainers, even if you're in a playoff race, like if you are in one of those Fugazi races, it's not Fugazi, but it is, where you're 5 games under 500, but you're 2.5 games out of a playoff spot because the bottom of the National League is so bad. I think trading those pitchers that I mentioned, but promoting your youth and giving opportunities to young arms, that's not giving up. That's like smartly rebuilding while also saying, hey, maybe these guys will be better. How do I know? I think other deals, trading Pete Alonso, which that's certainly a deeper issue, which I'm sure we'll do many pods on. That's different. You do that, you're not like strategically looking at young players, trading guys you had no chance of keeping anyway. Like, it's a little bit different. But the Manaea, Severino, Quintana, and you may be able to do pretty well on them. With the young arms on the way, that is certainly an encouraging thing to look forward to if they indeed decide to do that. So here we are. The Mets are about to begin a 3-game series in Washington against the Washington Nationals, and then they play 2 games in London. And I'm going. Very, very excited. I told my wife yesterday, I said, you know what? We're going to London. The Mets happen to be there. We happen to watch 2 games in London. It is a station thing, believe it or not. I'll take you behind the scenes all the way back in December. My old boss, Spike Eskin, called me up and said, Evan, would you go to London to see the Mets play? And I said, you don't know me by now, do you? He finally got to know me on opening day. But I said, of course, you kidding me? You guys are going to send me to London. I'm going to watch the Mets play. I'm going to make my wife the happiest woman in the world because she wants to go to Europe. Like, tell me the negative to it. Even if the Mets suck, tell me the negative to it. And so we did a promotion with a travel company, with a company that put together a package to go to London. And I guess a few people bought it. So I'm going out to London. We're going to go out to some dinners and some tours and go see 2 baseball games. I do plan, Pete Hoffman, of doing a Rico London. Now, I don't know how it's going to sound, but I promise you, especially after the series ends, I don't know if I'll do it each night, but certainly after the series ends on Sunday, I will definitely give you a London Rico. I know you're looking forward to that.
Oh, I can't wait, dude. That's going to be the highlight of my year. Question, what time are the games again? Do I have to wake up early for this?
So the times of the games for you guys, you Americans, will be 1 o'clock on Saturday, which is totally normal, and then 10 a.m. on Sunday. So the one on Sunday is obviously a little bit different because it's a 10 a.m. game. It's a 5-hour time difference in London. So for me, I'm going to a Saturday night 6 o'clock game, and on Sunday, I'm going to a 3 o'clock in the afternoon game. What I still don't know, and I swear to God, I have no idea. I should do the research. Where are the games? When I get there, I'll find out, but I don't know the stadium. I don't know if it's a dome. I certainly hope it's a dome, considering it rains all the time in London, but I honestly have no idea.
If it wasn't a dome and it'd rain on like the first day, would they have a doubleheader the next?
That's why it's a great question, Pete. Like, I really don't know. So we will give you a Rico London. The one thing that will be slightly different is that when this series against the Nationals end on Wednesday, late afternoon, early evening, I cannot do a Rico Nationals recap. So, Pete, that is all yours on Wednesday night. I'm actually flying out that night. And I started thinking about it, like, can I do one from the airport? How about one on the plane? I thought about it on the plane because I think that could be a situation where someone gets really pissed at me. Could you imagine? I'm on a plane. I'm in London. We got the Wi-Fi working. I'm like, oh, yeah, we're good. Turn the camera on. And all of a sudden, on a 7-hour flight to London at 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, yeah. And then Mendoza decided to pinch hit for Nito. You imagine all those people next to me like, what the F is that guy doing?
No, they want to go to bed, dude, because that's like an 8-hour flight?
Yeah. It's like 7.5 hours, 7.5 hours, 8 hours, something like that.
They may throw you off the plane.
It's possible. So I give you the Rico schedule. After the Mets play the Nationals in game 2 of the series, we will do a Rico Tuesday night after that game ends. Hoff will give you a Rico on Wednesday to recap the assuming you're willing, Pete, obviously. I don't want to tell you what to do. You're willing?
Always willing.
Okay.
Always willing.
A Wednesday Hoff Rico, recapping the entirety of the series. And then I will give you one from London sometime late Sunday. Well, late for me, early for you, because the time difference is so effed up. So we'll give you 3 Ricos coming up next week. Just looking ahead, I'll quickly give you the pitching matchups for this Nats series. Tyler McGill against Mackenzie Gore. Gore's had a great year for the Nats, lefty. David Peterson against the former Met Trevor Williams, who's also had a great year for the Nationals. And then Luis Severino against Patrick Corbin, another lefty on Wednesday. That's a late afternoon game against the Nationals. So 3 games against Washington. And by the way, we're 11 games under 500. So not good.
Hey, question for you. When you go to London, are they bringing extra players with them in case of some godforsaken injury?
That's a good. I'm going to assume they bring a taxi squad with them, because, and by taxi squad, maybe one guy, like maybe an extra arm would be my assumption. I would guess, and I don't know the answer, so I'm completely spitballing here. Backup catcher and another arm. Because I think anything else, if there's an injury, it's only 2 games you can get by. God forbid you lose a catcher. Like, you know, that's a really tricky spot. And then, you know, you give yourself another arm. So that'd be my assumption. But the Mets have 2 off days. They're off Thursday and they're off Friday before they play those 2 games in London against the Phillies. And then they're off Monday. So they're actually having 2 games in 5 days, which is rather unique.
And this is a weird one because I know that in previous regimes, this might not have been the case, but it's safe to say that if you're going out to London, you're going to come back a Met, right? You're not leaving being traded or being released, right?
Is there anyone that's a good candidate to leave them in London? Like Jeff McNeil? You want to go with that? Like if Jeff McNeil goes 0 for 8 in London, maybe that'll be the big one. Like, you know what? Screw you. You're gone. Get the hell out of here.
They're not going to fire Carlos Mendoza before they leave come back home.
I think Mendy is very, very safe. You know, as well thought out as that Jimmy email was, I would be stunned. I'd be stupid. Something would have to happen. That'd be the way I'd phrase it for Mendoza to be a one and done manager. It's just him and David Stearns are on the absolute same page. We appreciate you listening and downloading, whether watching on YouTube or downloading the podcast, Rico Brogna. We appreciate it. Download, subscribe, rate. I met someone at the Met game on Sunday. I forget his name. He's probably listening right now if he made it through the full hour. And he gave me maybe the most unique compliment I've ever gotten. And I was with my youngest son at the time. We had split up. My wife was with Jet. I was with Spence. We're walking down the stairs. And he says, Evan, I love the Rico. I said, thank you. I really appreciate that. It always means something to me when someone says that about the show or the Rico. And he says, I'm a Jewish kid. You are my rabbi. You're the Mets rabbi. And I said, thank you. That is the most unique compliment I've ever gotten. So from here on forth, just call me Evan the Mets rabbi. I'm just kidding. At least to that guy I am. And I appreciate that. It was a very, very nice compliment. Thank you very much. Always an honor when I meet anybody who listens to the show or the Rico out at Citi Field. Either way, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. You can always email us your thoughts to ricob@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 725-222-8699. Thank you for listening to Rico Brogna. Good night.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.